One of the biggest struggles of life is patience. I struggle with patience even at the age that I've reached, that sometimes I just become very impatient. And I know that it's not an uncommon problem for people to lack patience. I know that a lot of people are really concerned about all that's going on with the school shootings and so on. And yet there are no simple answers to this. How many of the school shootings would have been prevented by gun control? Gun-free zones have already been proven not to work in places where they put them in, Chicago and other big cities. There's been no decrease in the amount of violence. Controlling the bullets, controlling the guns, it's not the issue, because those that want guns and ammunition will find a way of getting them. And those that like the sport of shooting targets or hunting will not be able to get guns or ammunition if those kind of controls are put in. Are there some things we can do? Of course there are. We can outlaw things like bump stocks. They're not necessary. But you know, a person that wants a bump stock can make one pretty easily. And you can outlaw the multi-shell cartridge containers, the clips that go into the guns, but people will make those or import those secretly, and still those that need them. And all you have to ask yourself is, when we outlawed alcohol, did it stop alcohol from coming in? When we outlawed marijuana, did it stop it from getting into the hands of all of those that wanted to use it? When have you ever seen the government be able to outlaw something and it be effective? So there are no simple answers for these things. And is there some fear for children going to school? Sure. And my daughter's a school teacher, so I have the same concerns for her safety as I do for students going to school. I have two granddaughters who are in school. I have the same fear for them. But I've got to believe that God's on his throne and God's going to protect them. And even if he doesn't protect them, I know where they're going. And I know that they'll be okay, even if they're taken from me here on earth. So that's the basic issue, is that we need to do what we can do to make it a little harder for those that might quickly and impulsively do some kind of violent act. So waiting periods for guns, I don't have any problem with that. Raising the age of who can get a gun, I don't have any problem with that. Doing far better background checks, I don't have any problem with that at all. As a matter of fact, I believe that's the area that we've not done a good job. And it seems like President Trump is in agreement with those kind of issues too, that he doesn't have a problem with those things. I'm not even sure the NRA has a serious problem with some of those things. Is there some danger in registering every gun that's sold? Well, of course, if the wrong kind of government ever gets into power and they decide to go around and collect all of the guns, they're going to know exactly where to go to get them to collect them. And that, of course, is the reason for the Amendment 2 of the Constitution. Read it carefully. It says even against the government. So no easy answers, and we got to have patience. Well, that brings me to Habakkuk chapter 1, verses 1 through 11, and patience. The Assyrian army was moving in, and the Assyrian army was known for its violence and for its ruthlessness. Coming right out of the section of scripture in chapter 1 is that they mock the kings and rulers. They make it a laughing matter. They come for violence. They're dreaded and feared. All of that is right there in the text of the scripture. The Chaldeans. The Chaldeans were a terrible force. And here's what Habakkuk writes. How long, O Lord, will I call for help and you not hear? I cry out to you violence, yet you do not save. Why do you make me see iniquity and cause me to look on wickedness? Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Strife exists and contentions arise. Habakkuk was getting impatient. How long, God, before you hear me? Well, the fact of the matter is we all know that God heard him. God's timing is not always our timing, and his ways are not always our ways. We need to learn how to trust and have faith in him. Now, in the area of gun control, I think that there's a good focus now coming on some reasonable restrictions, reasonable requirements for guns. But again, I'd take you back to the question. If you examine each of the recent shootings in the last 2 or 3 years, would gun control of any of these types change the outcome? Would a waiting period, would an age requirement, would the amount of shots that could be put into a gun have helped any? And I think you're going to find the answer is no, it probably wouldn't have. Because those that want guns to do harm will find a way of getting them. And let me suggest to you that even if you take away the guns, anybody can go on the internet and find out how to make a bomb. Anybody can go on the internet and find out exactly how to assemble one. Excuse me. So they might just change their methods. But if their hearts are wicked and their respect for life is not good, it's not going to change. The terrorists have found new ways outside of guns. They just take vehicles. They rent them from a rental car company or a rental truck company and run them into crowds of people. It's probably not going to be very long before one of these young people or one of these terrorists or one of these people with mental issues decide that getting a gun is too much trouble. It's much easier just to go ahead and rent a truck or to build a bomb out of pipes and explosives that they can get from any fireworks factory or any other place in the black market. No, the problem is in the heart. We've got to teach from the beginning of a child's life respect for life. We've got to provide mental health. We've got to stop exposing our children to so much violence and allowing them to see through video games, through movies, that it's not a game, it's not a movie, it's real life people. So, am I frustrated? Yes. Am I fearful for my daughter and for my grandchildren? A little bit. But do I think that there's easy answers? Do I think that protesting and demanding is going to do anything that we're not going to do anyway? And even when we take the actions we take, will that really help? I kind of doubt it. I kind of believe that we've got to get to the root of the problem, which is the heart. And getting to the heart is through a person named Jesus. When we teach parents to raise their children as Jesus would have us to raise them, when we teach children to become more like Jesus, when we provide care centers for those that have mental illness, then we'll start to make some real inroads on the amount of violence and problems that we have in our country. And that goes to equality, that goes to prejudice, and that goes to the violence by guns. We must love one another and teach that to our children. Is there a correlation between taking the Bible and Bible teaching out of the schools, the number of single parents, the number of children coming from one-parent homes? Is there a correlation between these things and the amount of violence we now see in our society? Yes. It happens to manifest itself right now in gun, but doesn't mean it's going to stop with guns. We still have all of those other ways of killing mass numbers of people. So I want you to pray with me. Pray that the legislation of the states and the federal government would be realistic with their controls, knowing that the controls are probably not going to make a significant difference in the violence that we're seeing. And that we would all focus, churches and government, on changing the heart of people to respect life. And that's my thought for the day. I hope you'll have patience. I hope you'll realize that if you're crying out to God for something else, that you'll recognize that God hears. And He's working. He's working behind the scenes. And He will take action, just as He did in the Bible. Your thought for the day. God bless.